Hello and welcome to Catamount Community Connection, our weekly program each and every Sunday. I'm your host, Brian Collamore, and our show is brought to you by the Rutland County Agricultural Society. We've been saying that for quite a while, and the 78th Vermont State Fair is on the horizon in August, the 13th through the 17th. And we have, as our special guest today, Robert Congdon, who is president of the Agricultural Society, and so the fair. And I want to mention a couple of things first. Of course, folks that are listening to this show have begun to let me know they are hearing it and enjoying it, and I really do appreciate that quite a bit. And it's always nice to get feedback on that. And so, Robert, welcome in. We haven't talked to you for a few months, right?
It's been a little while. Yeah, no, I appreciate you having me on, Brian, and it's always great to update folks on what's going on in our neck of the woods.
So we are looking forward to the fair coming up in August, but I did do a little bit of research as we began to think about doing the show, and I guess I learned something. I didn't know that it originally started in Castleton, way back on the Frederick Button farm, perhaps, or somewhere back there?
Yeah, and actually in our history, the Buttons are some of the early presidents of the association, which is interesting. If folks visit the museum this year during the fair, I invite everybody to take time, check that out. But yeah, the roots ultimately are in Castleton. Then it transformed, mid 1800s. As you know, the society received the donation of land from the families that got together and owned that part of the city and decided it was a great location for a fair. And that's when they put that in place and set the contingency that, so long as a fair takes place there, the society was to remain in possession of that property and keep it going and do it in perpetuity.
So I didn't realize either there was a short period of time, maybe 10 years or so, maybe not even 10, where it actually was in Rutland, but at a different location. And I'm looking at the history here, the Baxter Estate, and also land owned by John Kane, where Grove Street and maybe just a little bit north of Crescent Street, there must have been a big farm there at one time. Yeah,
all those old farms that existed even within the city limits. So that there was a couple different locations before it finally landed on the 175 South Main Street location.
Okay, and it's been there ever since. We've had a fair every year. What did we do during the wars?
So my understanding is they either had a small gathering that basically replaced the fair, which actually that's what we did during COVID to fulfill the requirement. We had just a socially distanced, quiet dairy show in one of the back buildings where a few families came together, and we fulfilled the requirement and were able to continue. During the war, and actually during, I believe, the Spanish flu epidemic, I believe there were some issues back then. But again, they managed through each of those years to fulfill the requirements so that it wouldn't, the property wouldn't have to be basically turned around and turned back to the families.
And obviously it's in an ideal location. I'm sure many people have lusted over the possibility of taking it over and doing something else with it. But as long as there is a fair each year, given those kind of circumstances that we talked about, it will continue to be there. And I've been in Rutland since 1972, and I've been to the fair every single year. Maybe it's only one day some years, but I've always tried to get there. I'm a big fan of maple candy, so I always head over to the agricultural side of things. But a lot of people associate the fair, I guess, with entertainment of one sort or another, whether it's the Midway or the Grandstand. And we'll talk about this year's fair and all of that in just a second. But I did want to also mention, because, again, we're recording this on the 17th or the 19th of June to air on the 23rd. So there's only a little bit of time in between. Sometimes we'll do a show and put it in the can like a month ahead, and then it gets really hard to remember. You can't say certain things because they'll already have happened by the time that the show airs. So we're probably not in danger of that. I did look through the rest of June. I don't see anything there in terms of events at the fairgrounds. But July, of course, my favorite, well, not my all-time favorite, I like the fair, the Rave Car Show is coming up. And I was involved with that from, I guess about 1978 or so. The original car show, if I'm remembering correctly, was held downtown in what used to be the Firestone Shopping Plaza area, and it wasn't anything like it is today. I don't know how many cars wasn't there, but maybe half a dozen cars showed up, and that was the original one. And it was also a Chamber of Commerce function for a while, and we eventually got to the fair and had the show there every year. And then for some reason, somebody suggested that we go up to Pico one year, so we did. And it rained, and the cars got stuck in the mud, and it was an awful, awful year. And from that moment on, we've been back down at the fairgrounds and have never left. So the Rave Car Show is coming up. It's always the second full weekend of July, and this year it happens to be on the 13th and 14th. And I know you're a big fan of that whole group. They're a wonderful nonprofit group that began in West Rutland at Eddie Fabian's place, and it's gone on from there. The WSYB Christmas Fund is a beneficiary of the Rave Car Show each year. They do the so-called 50-50 tickets, and we get half, and whoever it is gets the other half. And sometimes whoever it is, if it happens to be a local person, will donate it back, so we get all of it. But it's a great group, and it stands for the Rutland Area Vehicle Enthusiasts.
And they do such a great job every year. They are a staple on the fairgrounds. Everybody looks for that event. Everybody looks for just I think the camaraderie that comes out of that too, as everybody comes together, gets to show off the iron, right, and right. Just have a great time. So it's a great event, and definitely one that we look forward to as well. And they've been a huge supporter of the fair as well over the years, which we've got a great relationship.
Yeah, and of course they give every single dime that they pick in with the entrance fee and the programs and the sponsors right back to the community in one fashion or another. The Christmas Fund is just one of many organizations that they give back to. And you'll see license plates there from all over New England and Quebec. We have a lot of Canadian visitors every year that come down and show off their cars. For some reason, of course, it's everything changes. And so what was the 50s and 60s cars, which were kind of like really popular at one point, have begun to sort of fade out a little bit. And you still got the Model T group and that, but now you've got a lot of younger folks who have, relatively no interest in a 1957 Chevy, but they have their own kind of thing going, and that's good, and that's the way things can keep going.
It's great to see the next generation coming up, absolutely.
The other thing you have coming up at the fairgrounds next month in July is a motorcycle club gathering. I'm not sure exactly what that's all about.
Yeah, and that's actually just one of the private events that is rented out for us. We've also got Summer Smash coming up on the 4th.
Yep.
We've got a lot of folks don't realize the reality of how much the fairgrounds really does get used. A lot of people don't think that it does. They drive by and they're like, what's going on down there? And there really are. There are a lot of different things. There's rarely a weekend that something's not happening. Whether it's in the equine area, whether it's in the dairy area, there's lots of different things that occur and take place on again, all the weekends, especially when we're in full busy season, which is where we are now, once the summer kicks in and we've got the weather.
So the Summer Smash, tell us a little bit about that. I know it's a very popular event. Is that going to be right on the 4th? Or?
Yep. So we are right on the 4th this year. We're going to have a vendor market out back of the grandstand, which is going to be lots of different novelties, lots of food, lots of those types of things set up behind the grandstand. And entry for that is always free. The only thing you actually have to pay for on that day is the grandstand ticket to go watch the Demolition Derby, which is going to kick off on the Diamonds and More grandstand at 6:30. So there'll be a great event in the evening to celebrate Independence Day and enjoy on the fairgrounds with everything going on with all that food and all of those novelties that people can come down and check out. And it's been a great event. It's been a growing event now for a number of years. And Summer Smash is definitely, I think, a staple of 4th of July in Rutland.
And then I see the other July event is the 4-H Dairy Days Clinic.
Yep. Yep.
And tell us about that.
So 4-H gathers every year, and they do this for both dairy and equine, where they basically it's a clinic for the kids to practice and get prepped for the fair. And those events are open to the public. People can come down and check them out. They will be practicing their showing and do get judged, are able to go through that clinic and go through the full process, like what they're going to experience during the fair. And that takes place over 2 days in the Bill Weeks show arena down on the backside, down by the old Royce Mandigo Arena. Yeah. So where well, Brian, that back corner of the fairgrounds. And the Dairy Days is another, again, probably little publicized, something that folks don't really realize goes on that happens every year.
Okay. So those are some of the events that just on the calendar looking here. Maybe there's more that didn't make the calendar when I looked at it, but those are our July events. And then, of course, as we mentioned, the 178th Vermont State Fair will be August 13th through 17th at those same fairgrounds. And we could spend a little bit of time now to kind of talk a little bit about that. What's new, what's going to be coming up, who's the entertainment. I've noticed over the years, you guys have done a very incredible job of balancing that sort of agricultural aspect to the fair with the more, I don't know if it's urban, but, sort of the entertainment and the midway thing. Different rides have come in and left and come back and left and all that kind of stuff. But the further south end of the fairgrounds is my favorite. I guess as you get older, I'm not going to go in the tilt-a-whirl at 73 anymore, probably, right? I'm going to take a little bit of time to just walk around and enjoy it, hit the MSJ booth a couple times, and so you've done a great job balancing that, because I think it is important that both of those sort of genres get represented each year with the fair.
Well, and I appreciate hearing that, Brian, because the reality is that that's something that we have always strove to do. We want to have that balance. We don't want one end of the fair to appear more important than the other, because all of it is what makes it the Vermont State Fair, whether it's the vegetable department, and I can't start listing because I'm going to miss somebody and then somebody will be upset with me, but just all of the different aspects and all of the different groups that come out to make it what it is. And all the supporters, all of the sponsors, everybody comes together just to make this such a community event, to put it all together. And whether, the smile on the face, even for the little kiddos that may, get a $2 premium for something they entered, which I know is not much, but at the same time, it makes the day, right? And it does allow the agricultural tradition to live on. So yes, that's definitely what we have really sought to do this year, aside from all of the agricultural exhibits and all of the staples that are always there. We have Amusements of America back with the rides, and they partner with Miller Amusements, actually. So we actually have two ride companies that come together to put together our midway. So they're going to be back this year, and looking forward to that. And on the Diamonds and More Grandstand, we're going to have a great lineup, and we're kicking it all off on Tuesday the 13th with a rodeo. So Pond Hill Rodeo will be at 7 o'clock that evening. We've got Abducted by the 80s on Wednesday, which is going to be a great show as well. There's a lot of buzz out there. And I'm an 80s baby, so I guess I didn't live necessarily that time period to know what kind of buzz there was going to be. There's some buzz around this show, which is exciting. And I think it's going to be a great group as well, which again, as you mentioned, pulls a different group, pulls at a different balance for the fair shows. So that's great. And we're partnering with the Paramount Theater for that one. So that's awesome team as well. And Catamount Radio's on board as well for those, so that's awesome. Then we've got Thursday night is going to be the Demolition Derby this year. So DNA Motorsports is back. They're bringing the Demolition Derby at 7 o'clock on Thursday evening. Friday evening, another show that's got a lot of buzz surrounding it. RPM Promotions, which is actually out of the Midwest, they're going to be bringing flat track motorcycle racing to the track. That's going to be under the lights. It's going to be an evening show. They're going to start practicing about 4 o'clock, and then between 6 and 7, they're going to start their heat races and go into the evening, into the night with their heat races. And that's really looking to be extremely popular. We are actually a points race for them for the Northeast. So it's going to draw in folks from around the area. We've got people coming from Canada for that. We already know we got people coming down out of Maine, Pennsylvania, New York, lots of folks coming in to participate in that race. So that's going to be a great night as well. And then we wrap it all up working with the Paramount and Catamount Radio on the Diamonds More Grandstand again to have Tyler Hubbard of Florida Georgia Line. And that's just going to be, I think, a blockbuster show to wrap up everything. And he looks to bring, he's bringing the hits with him. There's no doubt about that. And I think it's going to just be a great summertime concert.
Yeah. The last couple years, I listen to country a lot now. Again, as you get older, your taste time kind of change. But you had a young lady on last year that I thought was absolutely dynamite, and I could hear it from the road. Now I can't remember her name, of course, but
probably Gabby Barrett.
Yes, yep. That's exactly.
She did a great show last year. It was phenomenal.
Yeah. So good, Tyler Hubbard, and that's Saturday. Right?
That's right. That's what's going to wrap everything up for us. And again, I expect that. He has a great star power about him right now, and just dropped a hit. I shouldn't say it necessarily a hit. We don't know that yet, but he just dropped a new single. Actually, I think it was even this week. So he's got a lot of popular music on the radio, and I'm a country music fan like you are, Brian. So I'm looking forward to hearing the Florida Georgia Line songs as well. I mean, they were just so starstruck, with them over the course of the last decade, probably in all reality, that they've been just hit after hit after hit. And to have him coming and, he's really the lead of that group. It's really a great show.
When I think back when I was first in Rutland in my early 20s, we used to go down to the fair. We would have, boy, those were fun days, too. We would actually have a remote setup at the fair in this big trailer, and we would broadcast pretty much from like 10 in the morning until 5 at night. We'd come back here for the news on occasion, but we would set up there, and it was a lot of fun. And I can remember meeting people like Charlie Pride. Joe Crowley, rest his soul, was also our local kind of greeter, if you will. And he and Charlie hit it off, and they would walk around the fairgrounds together. It was really neat. I'm trying to remember some of the other people I've met during the years. Ronnie Millsap also was there at one point. I mean, country artists have kind of always been a big thing at the Vermont State Fair. I didn't see, I'm looking at a list here with some of the other top name folks that have come. I did not see Loretta Lynn. I'm not sure what year she was there, or Buck Owens. Well, maybe I did see Buck Owens. I can't remember. I do remember Charlie Pride and Ronnie Millsap, though, for sure. And they would stay locally at a hotel or motel. And one year I got to drive them back and forth after the show. It was kind of neat. So, And, you mentioned the Amusements of America group and the Miller group. So there'll be, is there like a new ride? I assume somewhere out there's an individual, maybe a group of people that think up new rides to put together somehow most of them kind of have to go in a circle or up and down. There's only a couple ways you can do it, right? That's
right. Well, the interesting thing about Amusements of America is, so there's still 2 units of Amusements of America. They go in multiple different directions. Okay. And the way it works is they actually the units kind of swap rides from season to season. So that's why we may experience you may see something this year that was not here last year, and they try to cycle it so that you get your mixture of rides. I know, like last year, what was really popular was the fact that the bumper cars were back. It had been a while, and actually that was a completely remade bumper car unit that they had restored, and it was brought back to us last year for the first time in quite a few years. And there was buzz about that fact, like, hey, we can go on bumper cars again. So yeah, there's always the variety. It's not like I get a list necessarily before they show up. I usually find out in the few weeks before the fair what's coming this year, and as I'm walking around with them and doing layout and figuring out where stuff's going to go, that's how we determine what's going to be in here in August. But again, they do a great job, and they do a great spread of what they bring our way, so it's awesome.
We're talking to Robert Congdon, who's the president of the Rutland County Agricultural Society, which brings you the Vermont State Fair every year and has since 1846. We were going to take a break. Yeah, we have 2 breaks to take. Let's take our first one now, and we'll be back with Robert in just a moment. We're back on Catamount Community Connection. I'm Brian Collamore, and this week we're talking with Robert Congdon from the Vermont State Fair, or Rutland County Agricultural Society, if you will. And we talked a little bit about the fair coming up this August, but I want to go back with maybe a couple other questions. I should have mentioned earlier, it just dawned on me, you're a newly re-elected president of the Vermont Agricultural, or the Rutland County Agricultural Society. How many people are on the board? How many elections are there held? Is it a yearly thing or every couple years, or how does that all work? Because I know you're related to someone that also had this office at one point.
And I've still got big shoes to fill.
Yeah.
So we are a 200-member society. So, and our actually application, for anybody listening who may want to get involved in the society, the application is right on the website. It's at the bottom. You have to kind of look for it, but it says if you want to get involved in the society or become a member of the society. So everybody who votes is a member of the society. Our annual meetings take place every December, typically the second Wednesday of every December. And that's when the elections occur. So the president's office is a yearly office. So I only hold office for 12 months and then must be reelected. Under the rest of the executive board, so we have an executive board and a board of trustees. The executive board, they are somewhat staggered, where there's 2-year terms for secretary, treasurer, and then we are one of those organizations which I've never truly figured out why there's 2 vice presidents. But we have two vice presidents. So anyway, those offices are staggered 2-year terms. So 2 of those are up each year. And then there are 6 trustees elected that serve. So the full board, voting board, is 11 members. There's 11 people that I chair the meetings of, and ultimately get to vote on financial decisions and the big decisions that need to be made. And then the president also has the privilege of naming ultimately 25, they're termed directors, which are, back in the old days of the society, were designed to actually be one person from the 25 surrounding towns of the fair, and they were really meant to be, at that time, to be the community relations person in their community. They don't hold a voting right other than at that annual meeting. They're not like a full board member within the trustee board, but they hold a pretty responsibility to be positive and to be out there doing that. That's morphed a little bit. It's not like we have one from 25 towns around the fair anymore. But I do have, I commonly just refer to them, the 25 helpers that, they're the volunteers that are really tuned in, that are helping a lot, and they are great spokespeople for the fair. So there's 25 of those as well that are kind of on the ground and being positive. And so when you hear somebody say, "Oh, I'm a board member," you have to ask, "Are you a director? Are you which one are you?"
Interesting. And of course, your grandfather, right, was the one that
he was.
A lot of people can still remember him, and he was around when I first came to Rutland, and would see him at the hockey rink every now and then. And he and Bob Sharp,
sure,
great guys, absolutely salt of the earth. I love the display that you have. I think it's in the President's Building with the names of all of the past presidents. and sort of a history of the fair. And to me, it's really interesting. And I would urge everybody when you're there this year, in the middle of August, to make sure you visit that display, because it really is. It's our history.
It's an amazing history. I mean, there's lots of names on that list. We already mentioned the Buttons earlier. Some of the founding families. Proctors are on that list. There's some really popular Rutland names that you look back through our history, that you hear from our history, that were instrumental in being a part of the fair and bringing that to life. And the history, there's just so much that, and for me, my trade is a history teacher, so I just soak that stuff up. And the reality is that the history too, that in some cases we're losing as the generations are going on, that we don't have anymore, that we, I can sit and listen to Bob Sharp every day, all day, I think, just to hear the stories that he's got and the different pieces that he knows. That is a wealth of knowledge. So,
you mentioned that we are unfortunately, each year losing a little bit more and more. I sit on the Senate Agriculture Committee in the legislature, and I look with I don't know if it's disappointment or just regret. There used to be about 4,000 dairy farms in the state of Vermont at one point, and we are down now. When last I checked, it was something like 432 or something. It's an amazing. It isn't to say that we don't have as many cows. We kind of do, and the milk production is up. But the reason is that the farms have gotten larger and larger and larger, and there's been a great consolidation, which is okay. But I think if you ask people that don't live in Vermont about Vermont, one of the things they would tell you is that the family farms, and when they say that, they're talking maybe a herd of 50 or 100, and now you're talking about thousands and thousands. So we are unfortunately not able to be able to talk to folks like Bob Starr or Bob Sharp, and Bobby Starr is my chair, and also a former dairy guy. So he was and is not running for re-election, so he won't be back next year. But anyway, he was always a great guy to talk to about the old days too. And when he was my age in the 20s, I'm sure that people talked to him about the old days, meaning the 1800s. And so it is different, but it's just it's sad.
Yeah, the passing, the changes in agriculture. My history. I'm a farm kid. We milk 70 to 80 cows regularly. Unfortunately, for us, I blame really probably Tropical Storm Irene is really what ultimately led to our demise. Certainly that was what contributed to the speeding up of it anyway. But we're still doing hay and things like that. And I think that is a piece that we do at least still have in the midst of this, even in the farms that aren't truly family dairy farms anymore. They may still be doing the hay. They may still have some heifers, some beef cows, things like that, so they're keeping their toe in the water, so to speak. Most of us probably don't miss milking, to tell you the truth, twice a day, but that's that's another side story, I guess.
Well, it's a little bit more automated than it might have been when you were a kid.
That's probably true. Probably true.
It's maybe a little easier, but yeah, I hear what you're saying. It's still a chore, and chore's got to be done.
That's right.
A couple other topics. I will, unfortunately, we want to get into this 3-acre rule situation, and then maybe we'll come back and talk about some of the other things that are going to be taking place on the fairgrounds. This is something that, unfortunately, has an intersection with the federal government, the EPA. That's how it started, and we're talking about the Lake Champlain watershed at the moment. And also, I guess, Lake Memphremagog is involved to some degree. And the decision was made that, phosphorus has collected over the years, and there's a lot of legacy phosphorus certainly in the lake, and that encourages that blue-green stuff to grow. And then the beach has to close, and everybody's all upset. And everybody's blaming the farmers, and it's not the farmers' fault entirely. They certainly share part of it, and they're working hard to figure out a way to do that. But anyway, we had a situation probably about 10 years ago now, maybe 12, where the EPA said, your TMDL, total maximum allowable, has to be at this point by a certain date. You figure out how you want to do it, Vermont, and then get back to us, and we will either approve it or not. And the decision was made that if you own 3 acres or more of what is called impervious surface, in other words, it doesn't allow water to infiltrate and go into the ground, it runs off all the time, then you have to come up with a mitigation plan, and that involves engineers and lots of money. And so that's what we did, and we told the EPA, here's what we're going to do, and they said, okay, fine, now go ahead and implement it. And so this is where the sort of rubber meets the road, because there were about, I'm trying to remember, 800, I think, examples of 3 acres or more in that western part of the state of Vermont. Many of them are in Rutland County, not all of them. And so it's going to be an expensive situation. The rule, by the way, has since been changed that now it's down to 1 acre or more if it's a new development, but the existing ones were 3 acres or more, and it's going to cost a lot of money. You are, unfortunately, in more of a bad situation because there isn't room for the Vermont State Fair to mitigate the way other types of businesses might be able to. In other words, if you own a car dealership and your parking lot is 3 acres or more, you can literally build a withholding pond and do it that way. The schools will have to come under that too, because most school systems have big parking lots. There's a lot of businesses, but some of them are a little bit more fortunate because they will be able to find a way to satisfy the requirement. But the fairgrounds is an example of not only more than 3 acres, but you don't really have a lot of wiggle room there, right?
Yeah, there's a lot of issues right now with the 3 acre rule situation. To start off with, we all believe in a clean Lake Champlain.
Of course.
I mean, we nobody, I think, wants to argue about that. Nobody wants to argue that we all want clean water. I mean, that's just the reality. But the struggle that we are facing on our property, and there's other properties like us that are facing this as well, is there are ways, I think, that could have been gone about to do this that probably would have had less impact and been able to hopefully accomplish theoretically the same thing. So right now we are in what we're referred to as the feasibility phase, where they're looking at our property to see what feasibly can be done to mitigate any of this, or can we do any at all? So the reality is that if you've got to build, as you already shared, settling ponds, different things to catch stormwater, allow those phosphorus, allow the other items that really aren't desired to settle out before it hits a waterway. So those types of things are taking place. We're in that phase. The problem we're running into is at first look, our property is not terribly conducive to a system. There's multiple levels to our property. We're spread out, so the impermeable surfaces are spread out, so they're not easily capturable in one particular location, which means that we are looking at the possibility of even up to 3 systems, which, I mean, is just astronomical building costs that are involved in that. The other piece of it is too, that the areas that these, collection treatment facilities would need to be constructed, are in the low ground of the property. And, if anybody knows anything about our part of the city, once you get down not very far at all, it's all clay. And the part of these settling ponds that has to exist is they have to be able to perk, much like a septic system, on a new build. If you're going to build a house, you have to perk the property first to find out if you can put a septic system even in. We've been told quite unlikely that the property is going to perk in the areas where they need to construct these facilities. So that puts us in a really tough spot. The other part of the problem is the facility where they've located, at least initially, are major portions of the fairgrounds that get used. So if we're going to be building all of a sudden large retention ponds in highly used land, it obviously has a major impact on our business. The flip side of this is if nothing can be built and nothing can happen because the property doesn't allow it, and state rules ultimately we can't fulfill. At that point, you get hit with what's referred to as impact fees, where you have to pay into the fund, the impact fee fund, which that money is going to get turned around and given to people who can build, which is that's a little bit discouraging from our perspective. But for us, we're looking at somewhere between $800,000 and $1 million, and to the listeners out there that are hearing this, we can't raise our gate prices to $50 a person because people just won't come out. We want to keep the fair as affordable as possible while continuing our tradition, educating. I mean, that's the Ag Society's mission, is to educate. We want to educate about agriculture, and keep the balance of entertainment so that they can see things that they'll enjoy. But we can't do that and ultimately raise the funds that are going to be required to meet this challenge. So I know there was a lot of discussion, which you and I both had at the legislative level, Brian. And I most recently, about a week and a half ago, had a long conversation with Senator Sanders' office and some of his staffs as they were diving into this now and trying to take a look at, okay, what reasonably can be done. And I think some of your colleagues in the legislature admittedly said that fairs were never intended to be captured in this law. We were never intended to be a piece of the collateral damage of this bill. And I think Senator Sanders' office essentially said the same thing, maybe with a little bit more Washington ease than we had in Montpelier. But the reality was that the fairs were collateral damage. It wasn't intended. And now I still hold out hope that there's going to be solutions found. I still hold out hope that there's maybe going to still be some compromise to determine where we are. And the other reality, and this is something Brian, that half of that list that was published, which we were of course on and many other properties were on, half of that list has not even begun the process and not even begun to do what they're supposed to do, to even start looking at what they're going to have to do. And the ultimate goal, based on our understanding of the legislation, was to capture ultimately, yes, those that were really not compliant, that were in existence, but also to really capture the new builds, to capture the big parking lots that you referenced, that are going to be going, if they were going to be putting in. So all of those things come down. The 3-acre rule is certainly one of my biggest headaches right now. And it's going to be for the foreseeable future. But I'm still hopeful that we can work to do some things. And Bobby Starr, you mentioned him. He did a lot of work, and Senator Ingalls up there, they did some great work to try to come up with some solutions in the committees you were on. I think come January, I think it's going to be another topic of discussion, because I don't think by any means it's over.
No, I think you're right. We talked in both committees, agricultural and institutions, that we wanted to somehow exempt all of the fairs. We didn't get to do that, but we did manage to, I think, find some money, not the $800,000 to $1 million that you need, because then you look at the Champlain Valley Fair and they've got even more acreage to worry about up there. But some of the funding would be available for the first phase of this, to at least look at some of the engineering studies and help you out that way. But it's not going to go away. As you correctly point out, Robert, I know it was the worst kept secret, apparently, because there were a ton of businesses that when they first heard about this, maybe even last year, went, when did this happen? And it's been in existence, as I said, for 8 to 10 years. And the question I had when we got a meeting with the folks from DEC, with the Department of Environmental Conservation, I said, are there really enough engineers in the state to do all the study that has to be done? And the answer was clearly no, there aren't. So now what do we do? I tried to talk to our 3 congressional folks from Senator Sanders, Senator Welch, and Congresswoman Ballen's office to figure out whether we could get the EPA to just extend the date a little bit further. That didn't gain any traction at all. So I don't know what we're going to do, but you're right. It'll be a topic for further discussion come January, if indeed I'm elected again, and you never know about that.
You never know, right?
Yeah, got to work and you got to be responsible to people. But I did want to mention it for those that are listening that didn't realize this is probably the single biggest financial challenge for all of the fairs, although I shouldn't say all of them. It's weird the way they set it up. If they don't feed into the Lake Champlain watershed, they're kind of exempt. So those on the eastern side of the state, where it's not phosphorus over there, it's nitrogen, I think.
I've heard it's nitrogen on that side, yeah.
So they are not involved yet, but certainly Champlain Valley, I think Addison, I'm trying to think of some of the other fairs that might be involved, but we did have meetings with all of them when the folks came in to see about the stipends again this year. So I guess more to come on that, and it's not a particularly pleasant topic.
It's not a pleasant topic. It's a topic we're seeking to make people aware of, as you are. We while we were up there, we actually just so happened one of the days we were up testifying to bump into Mayor Dunges, and he's well aware. There's just lots of different folks that we've tried to make sure they understand what is coming down the pike and make sure they understand what is happening. And maybe we've got business owners listening, and if you got that letter and you've kind of been sitting and ignoring it, the reality is that the seriousness of it is going to set in very quickly. Yeah. So it's one of those things that I think, again, a lot of work's going to go into it. Yes, there's now some money available in our realm to try to tackle some of these engineering things. And the city did a lot of work. I think back to the work even under Jeff Wenberg that was done to separate out stormwater from the sewage system in the city. That was one of the topics that came up because some of the fair stormwater, we're along some of that separated sewer now. And the sad thing is now that it's separated, it doesn't qualify as treated. So, it was one of those things. You and I had that conversation up there that, some of the good work that has been done, great work that's been done to try to, we none of us like reading about, sewage overflows and heavy rain and things like that because we know that's a huge contributor to what's going on. And now finding out that some of that great work that was done ultimately doesn't pay the dividends on this end of things. So, lots of information to come. I think there's lots more that's going to have to be talked about. I think that it's a novel that's far from complete in being written. So,
we're talking to Robert Congdon, the president, newly elected president of the Rutland County Agricultural Society, and we're going to go back to more pleasurable topics like what else is coming up at the fairgrounds when we come back after our break. Welcome back to Catamount Community Connection. Brian Collamore and Robert Congdon. And we are talking about a whole host of things having to do with mostly the Vermont State Fair and the fairgrounds here in Rutland. We've provided hopefully a little interesting history of the fair itself that began in 1846, and it's been going every single year since. Even through the wars, even through, as you mentioned, COVID and everything else that's come along. So the 178th Vermont State Fair will be happening August 13th through 17th. We've given you a little bit of information about that. I want to mention also, how many other fairs? I think there's 13 or 14 in Vermont, something like that.
And I'm president of the state association. I can't even think of what that is. We're I think it's right around a dozen. We're right in that ballpark. Yeah.
And we see you guys come in every year in ag and also in institutions, and it's always a pleasure. Jackie Folsom for years did a great job representing you guys, and it's always just so nice to have you come in. But many of the other fairs, we just mentioned that 3-acre rule, are going to have to deal with that as well. So the good news is Rutland won't be the only one, but the bad news is nobody knows seemingly how to fix it either.
Well, and I think the exciting thing too, is just shifting for just a second to the State Fair Association. being the not Vermont State Fair Rutland, but the State of Vermont Fair Association, which I have the privilege of leading that one as well. We all, there's a camaraderie among all the fairs. You mentioned the fact that we all come to the legislature together. None of us are out to quote unquote slit each other's throats. We're all there to work with each other. And there's a great community and a great atmosphere of support that we all have for each other. And that's something we all want to see each other succeed. And that's really a positive as well. So definitely positive atmosphere, positive culture among all the fairs in the state.
One of the more frustrating times I can remember had to do with the Addison County Field Days. They had put a brand new welcome center up and had bathrooms for people to use. And for some reason, and I don't know who decided, somewhere up the chain, the environmental group decided that the bathrooms and the stuff that comes out of them has to be put into a tank, and the tank had to be emptied every single night.
Yep.
And we spent, it seemed like, an inordinate amount of time, weeks, to try to get the Agency of Natural Resources in to talk to us. How can we fix this? Why are we doing this to a fair that's only open? I think they are is it 5 days maybe?
Yeah, they're 5 days like we are. Yeah, they're about a week before we are. And we were right alongside you because all the fairs were rallying to support Addison in that situation.
And, it seemed like it just took forever to just use some common sense here. And they kept quoting, the statute says we have to do it this way. Well, then we'll pass a new statute, darn it. But, fix the problem. Let the fair operate without this complete nonsense. And eventually, and it did take a whole session, they did get a solution to it. And I felt so badly for the folks from Addison County. But hopefully, and it was a beautiful building. And
I think I think this year is either their second or third year using those restrooms, because that's a recent issue. I think we're providing maybe a little bit of a window for folks to see in behind the scenes some of what we go through to bring these events. And it's not always easy. It's not, some people think that the job is just easy, and why don't you do it this way, and why don't you bring this, and why don't you do that, and it's not just as easy as a snap of the fingers to make that happen.
No, and unfortunately, in many cases, it's the state that steps in and creates another roadblock to overcome. So I felt so badly about that. I just wanted to throttle somebody. Anyway, back to some of the other things that are coming up. Monster trucks. When, where, what are we doing there? Yeah,
so we are doing monster trucks again in September. This has been a really, really popular event the last couple of years. So it's the folks from Two Extreme, and the Cretans are the last name of the folks. That's a family organization that comes in, and they just do a phenomenal job. And they're going to be here on September 14th this year again. And if the tickets aren't live yet, they sell them on their website. They will be soon. And they bring in bikes that do jumps. They of course do all of the car crashing and smashing with the big monster trucks. They do all the tricks. It's just a great afternoon. And that's been a huge hit now. And I'm trying to think if this is their third or fourth year with us that they've come in and done that event in the fall. And again, huge hit. It's always a packed grandstand. And they do an awesome job.
Something that's maybe a little less raucous is the vintage market days, and those are coming up again too, right?
Yeah, so Vintage Market Days, they've done 2 shows a year now for a number of years. So they will be with us on Columbus Day weekend again. So folks... one of the things, you mentioned the Rave Car Show and you mentioned these other events where we see tons of out-of-state vehicles coming in, and ultimately we know what that does for our economy. We're bringing extra dollars in. Vintage is one of those things. If you walk through the parking lot during Vintage, you're seeing Connecticut, Massachusetts, New Hampshire, New York, all the eastern northeastern states are coming out to that event, and that's awesome to see. They come in, and the vendors come in from all over as well, and it's just a giant, I don't even want to say flea market, because that's really not what it is. It's a show. I mean, these people really, we're not talking garage sale. We're talking, this is high quality items. There's also Rutland businesses that participate in this, that are bringing out antiques, bringing out their wares, bringing out local products that are being produced. In some cases, you can watch the products being produced right in their booth, that they're set up doing that. Every little thing, you walk through, you are going to get a wide variety. So it's a fantastic event. They've done a great job, and I look forward to them both times of the year. They had a great spring show, and we look forward to them being back with us Columbus Day weekend, and that's always a great weekend.
And then we mentioned the Rave Car Show in July, second weekend in July, and I'm not sure what number it is. I used to have the T-shirt from every year, but I know it started in 78 anyway, so I can't do the math that quickly. But the other car show that we could talk a little bit about is this Euro car show, right? Yeah,
the Eurobuilt car show. Scott Herdling does a great job with that. He and his wife put that on with a great team of volunteers. Again, the beauty of the car shows that take place on the fairgrounds, whether it be Rave, Eurobuilt, or even for the Love of Kids this last weekend, they all participate in charities. They're all out to contribute to charities, and Scott is no exception to that. Eurobuilt raises money for charity every year as well, and they are August 25th this year is their date. So it's always about a week and a half after the fair that they take place, and I'm amazed at all of these shows. The latest, I think, numbers that I had, and I haven't gotten updated numbers for this year, but all of these car shows have been hovering around 200 vehicles. I mean, that's a pretty substantial. That's not a small number of vehicles, whether you're Rave or, Ted for the last weekend for the Love of Kids that was raising money for the Shriners. And then Scott coming up in August, he's brought in a huge number of, again, European built, specifically Euro-built vehicles, and it's just a great. Each one of those are great events, and we look forward to that one in August as well.
And we have time. We have about 5 minutes left to talk a little bit more about, or just remind people again about this year's fair. Each of the days, who's coming, what can we do, what's new, what's.
Yeah, so we, again, August 13th through the 17th, we're going to kick everything off on the 13th with a rodeo at 7 p.m. Pond Hill's going to be back with us. So this is giving you the Diamonds and More grandstand lineup. Got to give Ivan his props. So
Ivan and Sally.
And Sally, they're great supporters of the fair. So the grandstand lineup, again, Pond Hill Pro Rodeo on Tuesday, Wednesday, Abducted by the 80s, Thursday, DNA Motorsports Demolition Derby. Friday is going to be the RPM Promotions Flat Track Motorcycle Racing. And then Saturday, again, wrapping it up with Tyler Hubbard of Florida Georgia Line. All of those tickets are available right now while we're talking on ParamountVT.org. We've been using the Paramount Theater, our partners, for box office for a long time. So you can go to ParamountVT.org and get all of your tickets there. We also, pays to mention, all tickets bought before August 1st for any grandstand show include entry to the fair. So you're up until August 1st, for about another month. If you buy your tickets online, you're going to get free admission to the fair and not have to pay that gate price when you get to the gate to come on to the fairgrounds. We also, right now, are running a promotion, which is referred to as the Diamonds and More Family Fun Pack, which you have your choice of. So first off, it's 4 admissions, so it's theoretically a family of 4 is what we're thinking for this. You get your 4 fair admissions, and you get 4 admissions to your choice of either the rodeo, the demolition derby, or the motorcycle racing. So one of those 3 shows, the 4 of you can go to that, and you get 3 sheets of ride tickets. So that's the family fun pack right now that's on sale. Plus, you're going to get Again, the Rochons, Diamonds and More made some great pins that are for the kids to wear when they come down to the fairgrounds, and they're also going to be a we're going to be announcing more about it, but there's going to be a passport to adventure where basically there's going to be a challenge for the kids to go around the fairgrounds to different parts of the fairgrounds and get a stamp. Yeah. And if they get so many stamps, they're going to get a prize. So we're working all of those things together as well for the passport to adventure, the passport to fun that we've got coming as well. And again, Diamonds and More partnered with us for all that. And it's a great thing, I think, to get kids more involved in the events and get kids more involved in the ag side, especially. That's one of our goals.
One of the events, I'm trying to remember, I think it was during the fair. I know it was at the fairgrounds, so was the dogs jumping into the pool.
Yep. So we have SRS dock diving dogs are going to be back this year. It's actually this is a new company actually that's going to be coming in. So it's going to be a little bit of a change, but not much. They're still going to be holding all of the competitions. So the dock diving dogs will be back. They're going to be set up in the same area, up by the President's Building and the Vermont Building area up there. We also cycled out a few of our grounds acts. We always try to do that and bring in some others that people might like to see. So we've got a reptile encounter this year, which should be pretty cool. Still, I got to get some more details on that one, but I've heard that from my grounds folks that's looking good to go. So we're excited for them to join us. We also have horses back with the pony show, which has been it's been quite a few years since they've been with us. That they're going to be rejoining us this year. And of course, you got to have the racing pigs. I think that if there's one sure way to lose my job is if I ever got rid of the racing pigs. So the racing pigs will most definitely be back, and you'll be hearing the bugle on the fairgrounds and knowing when to go check them out.
It really is something, I'll tell you. It's never the same twice. You could just stand there and watch, show after show, and it's different every time. And,
Wayne is a great guy, and I know his son's been announcing now for a number of years. Wayne's been with us, I think, off and on since, at least the 90s, and he's been coming in and doing the racing pigs, and if not before. And he's such a great guy, and he always looks forward. He always jokes and says, coming to Rutland's like coming home. So we always look forward to see Rosaires pull in every year.
Yeah. All right, Robert Congdon, president of the Rutland County Agricultural Society. And again, we'll plug it. The fair, the Vermont State Fair, coming for the 178th time, August 13th through 17th, where, down at the fairgrounds. And they've been doing this since 1846. And it's always a pleasure to have you on with us, sir. And we'll have you back very soon.
Thanks very much, Brian. So much appreciated.